shout out to you all for joining us on a Tuesday. Thank you for joining. And then next, I want to shout out the person that we're going to be speaking, Dr. Wendy from the Chicago Bulls. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to try and make sure that we can get you, you can hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. So we're going to jump in and talk a little bit about you, the work that you're doing with the Chicago Bulls, but also to really help us think through what mental health and wellness is, how each of us can put together a self-care and wellness plan for ourselves, as well as the young people that are in our lives. As many of us on the call are either educators, youth development workers, or have kids ourselves. So if you could tell us just a little bit about yourself, the work that you do with the Chicago Bulls, and how you ended up doing this work with a basketball team.
Sure. So let's see. I am originally from Ghana. I came to the United States when I was almost 5 and was raised in the Midwest in Oklahoma. And like most people, played every sport growing up. Mine was due to the fact that my parents wanted us to be, Americanized. So we did everything. I mean, every sport, every extracurricular, because they wanted us to be, we couldn't speak the language. It was speak English. There was a whole thing. And I stuck with basketball and ended up playing basketball. And then I majored in psychology in college and couldn't play basketball any longer than that. But I didn't know really what I was going to do. I was just, doing different jobs. And one of my jobs, I was working with adults that were schizophrenic and depressed. And my coworker was going to a sports psychology conference in New Orleans. And so knowing that I was an ex-athlete and thinking I would enjoy going to this conference, so she asked me if I'd go with her, and our job was going to pay for it. So Dirrick, I'm gonna tell you, it was a free weekend in New Orleans. I had a great time. I didn't attend a single sports psychology thing. I just had a free weekend in New Orleans. But about a year later, I started thinking, what is this sports psychology thing? What does this really mean? And so I started looking into it, and it was the connection of, athletes and helping them achieve their goals, helping them achieve their dreams, and the process. It wasn't actually the outcome, which the outcome comes, but it was more of the process. And that was a psychology piece. And I thought I could do this. This is just relating to folks. And then I need to learn how to do this. And so went back to school, got my master's, and then got a clinical doctorate because I wanted to be able to work with the whole athlete, not just the performance piece. And was at James Madison University for about 4 or 5 years, and then went from there to the Olympics. So I lived in San Diego and worked for the Olympics for 2 Winter Olympics and a Summer Olympics. And then decided to quit the Olympics and stay home. I had twins that were 14 months old, I believe, at the time. So I stayed home, and but then decided I was just in San Diego by myself. And so my sister lived in Chicago, and she had kids that were, her youngest is 9 months older than my twins. And so I thought, I'm going to move to Chicago. That way my kids could grow up with their kids, cousins can grow up with the cousins. And so I didn't have a job when I was moving to Chicago, and sports psych is a small field. And, lo and behold, the Bulls were looking for somebody, and all just came together. And I thought, God's telling me I need to be in Chicago. This all just came together way too easily, way too quickly. So that's how I ended up here in Chicago. I work with folks and helping them perform better. So it is whatever that may be, and I'll get into that a little bit later too. But it's about helping you think about how you can perform better, and then helping you put that thought into action.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it's so funny. I never would have put sports and psychology together. Although now that you mention it, it makes total sense, right? But I would have never thought that was an actual career. So that's really, really cool that you're able to marry those 2 passions of yours, things that you love, the sports, but then also supporting folks perform better through mental health and wellness. Today is a significant day. It's not only Mental Health Awareness Month, But today is the 1 year anniversary of the fatal shooting and killing, not shooting, I'm sorry, the fatal killing of George Floyd. A year later, the pain and the reflecting back to where we were a year ago is very potent with a lot of folks that I have talked to in many meetings today. When we think about the observation of Mental Health Awareness Month, in connection with all the things that we've experienced this past year, why do you feel that now more than ever, communities of color should truly dive deep into understanding mental health and wellness?
Sure. I think it's important for a couple of reasons. I think that the first reason is that it's important because it needs to reminds us to take care of ourselves physically and also mentally. I think sometimes we always think that we need to take care of ourselves physically, but we forget about the mental piece, and you can be mentally exhausted, which affects you physically as well. And so I think May allows us to be able to have those conversations that coincides with my second thought, which is to kind of, take care of the stigmatism about mental health and mental wellness. I think oftentimes we think that it's a negative. If you say somebody is working on their mental health or their mental wellness, maybe, we think that there's something wrong with them, when in fact there's something right with them. I like to think of it that way because it's not an easy thing to do. And so if you're focused on how to help yourself and how to make yourself better mentally, that's a hard thing to accomplish. And I think sometimes we get the negative feelings about that. And so being able to have open conversations and dialogue and talk about it, just normalize it, because it's a normal thing. We're hearing about it so much more now, but it's just a normal thing. It's hard. Life is hard. I tell you, I say all the time, life is so hard. Why make it even harder? So it's about that, having that open dialogue and just being able to remind ourselves that we also need to take care of ourselves mentally and not just physically.
Yeah, so and I like where you meant like it's something right? I think oftentimes when we think of mental health, we think of the extreme, right? Like the extreme of depression, the extreme of anxiety, the extreme of what isolation can do for us. But oftentimes it's being able to recognize the mild cases of depression. I know for me, like I can pinpoint specifically in the past year where I kind of felt myself going into this very like functional level of like depression, right?
Yeah.
So when people realize that like something is off, something is wrong, where do people go from there, right? Like if they do have that realization, where do you suggest folks then begin to kind of help and support themselves?
Sure. I think the first thing to think about is communication, right? I think being able to have that dialogue. I always like to say communication works if you use it. And we oftentimes we don't really use it. And so being able to talk to someone and be able to know that someone that you trust, and if it's a child and it's your parent. If it's not your parent, then it's an adult that you could trust. So I said, I think being able to have that that open dialogue. So I think communication is a good thing. Also, I think to think about, I always tell players that you cannot allow achievement to be accomplished by mood. So knowing that when things are hard, it's hard to do things. It's hard to get out of bed. It's hard to take a shower. It's hard to study for a test. It's hard to all those little things that are usually easy. And so trying to think about if you're struggling with those things, it's oftentimes it's that there's something else going on, right? So to think about that and to perhaps think about rest, getting your rest, trying to get as much as you can, maybe thinking about if you have a test or it's an extra long extraordinary day, again thinking about let me prepare ahead of time, get some things in place to try to help counter that. If you are let's say there's a test or there's something going on at work, you're again the preparation kind of help with that that feeling of, oh, it's hard. Where do I go from here? And giving yourself grace. That's something I learned myself during the pandemic, is you got to give yourself grace. Like I said, life is hard. And so I think being able to realize that the things that you used to be able to do, you may not be able to do it in the same succession. It may not be able as easily and as quickly, but you can still do it. So give yourself that grace, maybe lower some of that expectation. And yet something I had to learn personally myself as well. And so I think when we're going through these struggles, we forget that we can be kind to ourselves. You know, we can be kind to ourselves. We're kind to other people, but we also need to be kind to ourselves.
Definitely, definitely. I'm gonna go off of that last point you made. During the pandemic, during the you know, the very beginning, the height of all that was going on, there was a corner of Black Twitter who was talking about, you know, you should be using this time to build a business. You should be using this time to like go out and use your money to do this and do that. And like, you know, really like promoting this like productivity, like get out there, do it, do it. While that made sense, as you mentioned, during the height of the pandemic, like there was a lot of stress, anxiety, pain, fear, depression, like all of these things. Can you talk a little bit about like, you know, you talked about having grace with yourself, but how do you become okay with like, you know, sometimes you need those moments of rest, as you said, but not feeling like, oh, I need to be productive at this point. Like I have to be doing something. Like, what do you say to people who are oftentimes like achievers? That's what they like feel that they need to be doing. How does that connect with like mental health and wellness? And like, how do you help people to feel okay in that rest period?
Sure. You know, and that's I'm always doing a lot of things, you know, that's what, and I like to do it. And so it's hard. Just what you're saying is it's, you know, I feel myself in that same, you know, that same vein. And so I use myself an example a lot when I talk about this to other folks. And so it's a struggle, you know, and it's about slowing down, and it's about taking inventory and checking in with yourself. And that's, you know, one of my big things in working with folks is self-awareness. You have to be able to learn how to be aware of yourself. And that takes time, and that's a process, and hopefully it never goes away, right? But I think being able to slow down and being able to check in with yourself, if you know that, as you said, you can pinpoint when something specific happened that kind of set you back, you know, it's one of those, you stop and you think, wait, what was that? How did I feel? How did I react? So that way, you know, next time and what to do, right? And so you're taking note of that and not just letting the time pass away, which we often do. This is a hard thing, we work through it, and then boom, we're on to the next hard thing. You know, I like to tell you to let's stop and realize and slow down and think about things and try to understand what happened to help you move forward. And, you know, an example I'll give you is when, you know, again, the height of the pandemic, and my twins are 8, they were in first grade. And so it was them and myself, you know, in this house by ourselves. And you know, I was targeting the 7-year-olds forever, right? That's who I could have dialogue with because we were elected. And I was teaching them first grade. I was still trying to do my job with the bulls. I was still trying to, you know, everything else as a mom. And so it got to a point where I didn't realize how much pressure I was putting on myself and the expectation to do all things and to be everything to everybody, for my twins. And it led to my frustration of thinking, you know what, I just can't even do this any longer. I don't even understand how people do it. So I quit the first grade. I called their teacher and said, look, I can't do this. I don't know how parents are able to accomplish all that you send home, but I can't accomplish this. This is too much. This is what I can accomplish. This is what I'm going to do. So I laid it out. This is what I can do. And I hope that you can help support me with this. But what you're sending me, it's just not going to happen. Unbeknownst to me, I was one of, 100 other parents that were like, are you kidding me? I can't do this. And so they helped me feel a little better. But once I realized that I was doing too much and I quit the first grade, then I had to stop and think about, how do I best function? If I was talking to an athlete, how would I help them move past this? How would I help them learn from this? And how I best function is that when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do, I need to work out. I need to exercise. That's taking care of me, which allows me to take care of my twins. I need to exercise. I need to make sure that I'm eating healthy. I don't eat junk. And so when I do, I know there's something going on, right? I like to eat healthy. I love hot tea. Love hot tea. So I need to have hot tea in my day. So 2 things that I did from that point on was to make sure I worked out every morning and I had 10 minutes to myself, no TV, no cell phone, no kids for 10 minutes. And I got to enjoy my hot tea. That allowed me to take care of myself and that allowed me to move forward. And then I realized, what was I doing that got me to that point? My expectations were really high. I thought I could do everything, right? And I had no patience with myself, and I wasn't giving myself grace. So I learned those things for myself, and that helps me now moving forward. And that's what I would say for anyone in that same position, is to kind of, again, you're at the moment has happened, stop and take inventory, try to figure out what happened. How did you get there? How can you not get there again? What do you need to take care of yourself so that way you can move forward? And then you learn from that and implement those little tricks, into the next time something happens.
Yeah, no, that, I mean, a couple things in what you just said. Like, I'm at the point now where I feel like now, okay, I can start back like exercising, going to the gym, like going for a run. But my body felt that year of just sitting. And I think that impacted so many other things. But something else you mentioned was being able to like clearly define your boundaries. Like, look, this is what I can do, and this is what like I'm committing to do. But other things, like, we're gonna have to like figure out like how this works. And that is so hard sometimes to be able to, one, identify, look, Dirrick, you can't do it all. At one point you may have been able to, but today you can't.
Yes.
Here's what you now need to like delegate to other people or like get help. I feel like that's a very like hard step. You were easily able to do it. But for folks who are like having a hard time, like figuring out like, here's what I can commit to, and then being able to communicate those boundaries to others. What advice do you have for people to do that?
Sure. And let me just preface by saying I was not easily able to do this. This wasn't it wasn't an easy thing at all. I was literally drowning. So I knew all the information. I knew what I needed to do, but I got stuck in the same cycle. But I would say the first thing is to figure out, it's the the flight attendants, when you're on the plane, the mask on yourself before you put on somebody else. So I think that's the first thing, is you got to figure out what do you need to do in order to be successful or to be productive. Then you can move on to helping somebody else. So I think that's the first thing to do, is to figure that piece out. And then you need to execute it. Those things that you need to do, 2 or 3 things, you make sure that happens. That way you can be your best self, and then you can move on to help somebody else. And I think after that, then you start to prioritize. What are the things I need to make sure that I take care of? I think I love lists. Some people don't, but I think I love lists. So, I think having a list of, these are the things I need to do today, or this are the things I need to do this week, that helps you prioritize, right? And it's not a list, if I don't get it done, then there's something wrong. It's just you're prioritizing. So number one, this is what I need to do, and you're working on yourself down the list. I think that helps also.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a huge list person. Like, I wish you could see the wall in front of my desk. It's gotten so bad. I have like color coded sticky notes. So like, this color means this color means that. It's gotten good. It's gotten bad, but it is very helpful for me to be able to see all the things that I need to do and be okay. I didn't accomplish it all, but I did what I could do.
Yes.
And the rest of it can happen tomorrow. And I've gotten so much better at communicating that to people. Look, I did what I could do. Tomorrow, like, we'll get to the rest. So no, thank you for sharing that. When you think about like your work with the Bulls, right? You really put together mental health and performance. And I think that's like a very interesting like connection, right? Not only like for sports, like performing, like doing the, playing basketball, but like when you think about performance of life, like what you do, like performance at work, performance at school. How have you seen the isolation of 2020 impact people's performance in multiple avenues of life?
Oh my goodness. The biggest thing is depression. I think that's the biggest thing, with which the high spikes in our youth of depression. But I think that's the biggest thing, is depression in adults as well, because we're so isolated. I think that has been the thing that we see the most. The other piece, I think, is also the anxiety around not knowing what's next, how to protect yourself, and in some cases not even having a job. And how is life, the basics, how is that gonna happen? And so I think those are things that we've seen the most, and with the pandemic. And I think I would say that it's in order to, again, I'm going back to communication. I keep saying that, but it's such a big thing. You have to communicate. You got to communicate. So you got to communicate with everybody and fill in those pieces. But I think when you feel isolated, we tend to continue to to go inward and continue to go inward. And so it's about intentionally having those conversations with folks, intentionally trying to connect, and which is why we've seen more people on social media. We've seen more people doing FaceTime and and Zoom, and I know everyone's tired of all of that, but that's the reason why. I mean, I've had more phone conversations in last year than I think I've had in like 20 years, because texting is just not enough anymore. You want to actually talk to somebody, and so I think those things have been increased, and I think my hope is that it helps the communication continue to grow, because we're having to communicate, so then we can continue to communicate more once. I don't want to say things get back to normal, because I don't know if it's going to be normal. Our new normal, when it gets back to our new normal. But I think that depression and anxiety are the two things that we've seen the most. And there's lots of research that are coming out about, and it's literally little trickling now, but I think there's going to be a lot of good research coming out about how we can actually help ourselves and help our youth. And I think it's going to be really important for us to be able to utilize some of these things that the research is going to talk about, so we can help ourselves move forward and grow.
Yeah, definitely. To that point, right? Like, I think those are things that not only like we adults have experienced, but they also show up in young people, in students, our kids, like folks young people that we care for, right? And young people may not necessarily know what that means, what they're feeling. They just know they feel off, right? But as schools are, we know that CPS has transitioned to doing in-person school. But as we begin next year to be like fully in person, there's a lot of conversation around, students in person, high doses of like academic tutoring to prevent any additional like learning loss, and just very like rigid, rigorous like academics. What other things should like teachers and school administrators and parents be concerned about in this like forceful reentry back to like the norm, right? Yes, academics, yes, all of this stuff, but what are the other key pieces that are so important for folks to remember as students are starting to go back into learning environments?
Sure. I keep this one really simple. I think it's safety and structure. I think it is making sure that everybody feels safe. We're all going to feel safe in our own different ways. And so again, asking the questions, but I think helping the youth feel safe and giving them structure. I think structure helps them feel safe as well. I think those are the two things that are really important as we go back. Again, as we go back to figure our new normalcy, is being able to provide them with structure and the safety that we as adults are, not that we know everything, but we're doing the best that we can, and to move forward. And again, kids, they want it. They may not want it, but they want it. But they want it. So
Yeah.
it's up to us to provide it for them,
Definitely. Yeah. And as an educator, someone who works with students, what are some things that like we can look for in young people that may signal maybe they need like some additional support, like whether that's counseling, whether that's like group therapy sessions, or even just like, someone to talk to, right? What does that look like in a young person? Because I know there's a difference between adults and young people.
Sure. Oftentimes it's their behavior. It's a change in their behavior, the big shifts. And so you're seeing somebody that is maybe normally that is outgoing, they start to isolate, or vice versa. You're seeing them hang out with different groups of friends. You're seeing someone that they used to be very much on top of the grades. They're no longer worried about their grades. They're not studying. They're not reading. They're not doing what they need to do in school. Sleeping a lot. I know teenagers sleep a lot, but sleeping could be also a sign of depression. So I think it's the knowing, paying attention and know what is too much for your child, you know? So if they happen to sleep a lot, if they happen to stay indoors more, again, we're trying to, you know, the whole going out as that changes. But I think for me as a parent, it's always paying attention. I know my twins are young. I mean, they're 8, but it's always paying attention who their friends are. I want to know who their friends are, because I think that speaks to me about what's going on with them. If they're friends with, you know, with someone that literally has nothing to do with school, that's not in school, they could care less, that tells me that, you know, there's something there, and they're not thinking about school. So I think it's, you know, paying attention to their friends. I think that kind of gives a big heads up, you know. And if you can talk to the parents and find out more about the child, I think that helps out as well. But I think it's the big shifts in mood and personalities. I think it's where you find that there's usually something going on.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. So, you know, last month we launched our student self-care and wellness stipend, which was $200 for young people to apply. And we got so many applications, over 60 applications from students all across the city. And one of the questions that we asked them was, what have you been doing for self-care? You know, we got answers from, you know, working out to going for a run, folks who didn't even know what self-care was. Some people who were really like just concerned about like, you know, being with people. So many different responses. And it's interesting because it's the same thing with adults, right? Like self-care is defined in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes we associate self-care with like spending money and going on vacation or like doing all these like expensive things. Could you talk with us a little bit about like, how do you define self-care? Like what is self-care? And how can we incorporate this into our daily lives?
Sure. For me, self-care is an intentional act to take care of yourself. So it doesn't need to be anything elaborate, as you're saying, spend a lot of money, go on vacation. But if it's intentional, that means that you're thinking about taking care of yourself. Examples of that would be, and this is, I talk about this to all the, you know, to every athlete I've ever worked with. I believe they've probably heard the same thing from me, that I don't need you to go on vacation for you to tell me that you're taking care of yourself. What I need you to do is to take 5 minutes out of your day and do something intentional. That's taking care of yourself. That's self-care. It could be, if you like to take a hot shower, maybe you're taking a longer shower today. Maybe you're using your favorite shower gel. Maybe, again, I love hot tea. So taking the time for tea. Maybe you could take a nap. Maybe you want to watch a movie, call a friend, make your favorite meal. But I think self-care, again, it's an intentional act to take care of yourself. So whatever you do, if you have stopped through your day or at the beginning of the day to say, you know what, today I'm going to make sure that I have an extra 10 minutes after class so I can just sit and relax before I go on to practice, that is self-care. And that costs you nothing.
Definitely. You know, I love a good vacation. You know, I'm definitely looking forward to that self-care. But for me, I think, you know, a good mimosa is that's a great self-care for me.
It.
You know, it just makes me feel like everything, if only just for 3 minutes, you know, everything is fine in my eyes.
You know, you said that reminds me of that. I don't know it's at the potato chip. I think it's Cape Cod or something, where the ladies are at lunch and she's eating potato, and it's the sprinkler. She's, you know, she's visualizing she's on the Cape. That's totally self-care. She is. That's definitely it. Only for a moment. That mimosa and those potato chips they're doing the trick.
There you go. Kind of in that same vein about self-care, you know, with the swift transition back to normal in the city of Chicago, right? Things are starting to open back up. Like people got their vaccines, they're feeling good, and like things are blowing up the city for the summer, right? There can be a lot of pressure to present yourself in a way that we haven't been in over a year, right? Like being around people, being on, like I found myself having social anxiety. Like I'm around a group of people and I'm just like thinking about everything, like, am I saying the right thing? Like, oh my God, like I wasn't trying to be sarcastic, but that may have came off that way. Just like having to like think about all the things again, right? How can we fortify our boundaries? We've learned a lot about ourselves over the last year. How can we purposefully fortify our boundaries and maintain our self-care practices while feeling the pressure to like re-engage with the world around us?
Sure. I think the thing to do is to be honest with yourself and to be honest with others. You know, what is your comfort level? I feel it's very important, again, you know, if you communicating this piece, it allows you to feel a sense of taking control over a situation that you may not feel like you have control over, right? So if you're able to express that, and I thought of a couple examples, and one of them is a friend of mine. Her daughter is 7, maybe she's 9, I don't remember. They're invited to a birthday party, outdoor birthday party. There was no mention of people being vaccinated, but it said mask optional. And there was, she said she looked at like all the kids at her daughter's class were invited and the parents were invited. There was even a parents happy hour kind of thing. So this was a kids party, but they're really making it we had, as you said, we've been inside for a year. Let's have some mimosas. Let's get outside, right? And she wasn't sure what to do, and she felt uncomfortable. She was not comfortable going there. She was vaccinated, but she didn't know if anybody else was going to be vaccinated. So her comfort level wasn't very high, and so she had the conversation with her daughter. And I think her daughter was like 9, if I'm not mistaken. And her daughter said her daughter had the same thought, and she didn't give her thought to her daughter. She just asked her, "How do you feel about this party?" And she said, are we going to be wearing masks? And her mom said, not everybody. And the daughter was like, I'm not real comfortable going if we're not going to wear masks. So, that gave her that gauge. She wasn't comfortable. Her daughter wasn't comfortable. So, she declined and said that this is why. But putting that out there, it gave the person that was hosting it a little piece of, oh, wait, I probably need to make sure that everybody here is vaccinated or people wearing masks. But it wasn't that thought. So that helped her, the person hosting it, kind of change her thoughts as well, and make it feel safe for everybody. And so I think that checking in with yourself, know where your safety is and your comfort level, I think that helps. Another example is, I know that I saw that somebody was hosting a party. I saw a flyer about a party or a get together, but it said everybody had to wear masks. You must wear a mask. It didn't say about vaccination, but you must wear a mask. So they're telling you this is what's happening. So that's where you stop and think, is this something I'm comfortable with? And if it's not, then I think you gotta respect that for yourself, because as you're talking about it, then you're gonna find yourself in situations where you're like, oh wait, did I say something? Did I do something? Because you're already not comfortable. You're already feeling a little, I don't know if this is something I should be here. And someone coughs and you're like, so I think you kind of, check in with yourself and just be honest and figure out what you can do. And then that's where you start. We're all at different levels, and I don't think anybody's judging anybody. I think we're all just trying to figure out what's okay for us. I think remembering that we're not judging each other. We're all trying to figure it out for ourselves.
Definitely. So I know, like, as a psychologist, oftentimes you don't necessarily always share about like your self-care practices or what you do. So I want to ask you, when you think about like what self-care looks like for you, what are those things that bring you joy in those intentional moments that you take throughout the day to take care of yourself?
Sure. Let's see. For me, well, one of them is I gotta get on that Peloton every morning or get on the treadmill. That's a must. That is definitely my self-care. Again, I don't always get to have the hot tea, but the days that I can have that, I love to do that. The other one is something that I think a lot of people do not know, and when I do share, they're very surprised. Because of my personality, people feel that I'm an extrovert. I like to call myself a closet introvert. So in order for me to rejuvenate, to recharge, I need to be by myself. And so through the course of the day, there's going to be some time through the course of the day where it's just me. And I need to have that. And that is paramount to my mental health, because I'm around people all day long. I'm giving to them all day long, and so if I don't take that time for myself to where it's just me and I can just slow things down, I feel it the next day because I'm right back doing the same thing again. And so that's a real important thing to do. And I will say, on a funny thing, is that I actually watch a lot. I don't watch any TV that I could, or should I say, I watch a lot of HD TV. It's probably a better way, I think, because it's mindless. I don't have to think about it. And so that's what sits on. And so I don't watch any shows, because shows I have to pay attention to. And so just having the HDTV on mute allows me in that, I get to recharge after the kids go to bed.
I love that. Yeah, same here. People, I am an extrovert. I love people. I love being around people, but similar to you, like I do have those moments where I just need to be by myself. And it's funny because I feel like my friends now know that transition that I begin to use, like when it's like, okay, Dirrick is at a 0 and he's about to like leave or go somewhere, like that. I totally understand that. But yeah, HGTV, like they have some really great shows that just are on for
Yes.
me too. And I think it's just the like satisfaction of seeing something from like beginning to end, like them like tearing down the house or like putting up this like paneling on the wall, and it's I don't know, it's like really rewarding to watch.
No, and I agree. It is, and that's, I think for me, that's exactly, it's satisfying to see something positive happening, and I don't have to pay attention to it. I don't have to focus to understand it, to get into it. I can just completely zone, but still something positive. So absolutely.
Definitely. Cool. So last two questions for you. When we think about like uh, let's say young people first, like young people who are returning to school, getting ready for the summer, and they are, potentially feeling some type of way, like they know something's not right. You mentioned, talking to someone, but what would you say, what are the things, like, how do you talk to somebody about, like, I'm not feeling, too well, like something's off? What type of like advice or words would you give to young people to use to people that care, right? Like teachers, parents, family members, what words should they use so that they feel comfortable, but they're able to communicate how they're feeling?
Sure. You know what, I think the first thing, excuse me, it just is just talking. It doesn't even necessarily mean that you need to express all of these emotions or what you're feeling, what's happening. It could be that you want to talk about a TV show or the basketball game you watched or the test that you had. So just being able to talk to them is going to help you feel more comfortable. So I think just having that dialogue, taking the pressure off yourself of going in and going, oh, sometimes you need that. Sometimes you just need to go in and go, but sometimes you're not, as you're saying, we're just not ready. And so I think just having regular conversation kind of helps to ease the path. And then I think you can say things like, I used to do, or when things are great, I did, so you're kind of given a little, you want to show them that you used to do this, but now you're doing this, or things used to feel this way and now they feel this way. I think that helps to show that there's a difference there and there's a struggle there. Or even talking about your grades or school. I could, math was so easy for me, but here lately I'm struggling. I don't, this has really, it's been really hard the last few weeks. I can't really concentrate. And with math, as soon as you miss one thing, it's hard to connect. And so I think being able to talk about your classes, I think that helps as an easy in as well. But I think the best thing is just to talk. Don't feel the pressure to try to have to say all things at one time, but just to go in there and talk, and build that trust for yourself and that connection.
Gotcha. For anyone that's on the call, if you have any questions, definitely feel free to drop them in the chat at this time. Definitely want to create space for folks to ask any questions, any follow-ups to anything that has been shared thus far. You can either do it in the chat, or there's a Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen that you can use to ask your question. So we've carved out the last 10 minutes of our conversation for you to ask any questions that you may have. But while we wait for any questions, Wendy, first just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today and to share just a little bit about some of the struggles, the impact, as well as the rewards when when you are paying attention and taking care of yourself, your mental health, and wellness, self-care, all of these things, right? So thank you for taking time to speak with us today.
Sure, absolutely, no problem. I think it's real important. So I think anything that we can do to have the open conversation, the dialogue, I think it helps everybody. Helps everybody.
Definitely, definitely. We'll give a couple more moments for folks to ask any questions, and if nothing comes through,
I see one.
Oh, yep, I see a question here. So it says, what are some ways you've seen leaders successfully model self-care, wellness, etc., for their teams or for the young people that they may work with? So, similar to you got a lot of stuff like happening, going on all at one time, right? So how have you been able to see it successfully modeled to be able to center that with their teams or young people?
It's a meme that I've seen. It's a woman. So there's two women and two kids. They're sitting on a bench, and one mom and a child are reading a book, and one mom and a child are on the phone. And the mom that's on the phone, she says to the mom that's reading a book, "How do you get your child to read a book?" That's how you get your child to read a book. You read a book. You're on your phone, your child's going to be on your phone. So I think that is the way to do it, is that you think about what you're doing, literally what you're doing, they see, whether it's in school, whether it's in basketball, they see it. If you're coaching a team and you're having them run laps, but you're standing on the side, they see that. You're telling them to stretch and you're not stretching, they see that, they notice that. And I'm not telling you need to run with them, but I mean, they see that if you're doing something that is helping you stay healthy, they're going to see that too. You go out to eat and, everybody orders hamburgers and French fries and a shake. They see that. So that whole taking care of yourself, they start to model that. And so I think it's about you think about what you're doing when you're with them. Think about how they see what you're doing, and being able to shape that and have those conversations, the dialogue, and continue to reinforce that. And I know I keep stressing communication, but it's amazing how effective communication can be when you actually have it. It really is. And so I think the times I've seen it's been real effective is when someone actually does it, but it's not the let's talk about doing it, but they actually do it. Again, the meme of I'm sitting there reading a book, and I saw that meme and I just kind of laughed because I used to read on my iPad. Until my kids were like, "Well, Mom, you don't read." And I thought, "Oh, well, they think I'm on my iPad." So I started now I order all my books. So it's been like 2 years now. I order books now. I hardback because they thought that I was just playing on my iPad, but they needed to see me read a book.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's the piece.
Cool. And then the second part of that, I love that modeling piece of when we think about how young people are developed, they develop by what they see, what they're around, and but when we think about like leaders and folks who are working adults, right? I think, this was the hardest 2020. I think I worked the hardest that I've ever worked in my life, like literally. There were no boundaries, right? Like people just expected you to be working at all hours of the night just because you were home and your computer was there, or you felt the pressure that, I just need to wake up at 8:00 and I'm on my computer doing emails, right? How do you begin to not only set boundaries with other folks, sometimes you have to set boundaries with yourself. Like, no, Dirrick, it's 8:00, go make some tea, go, read a book or do whatever. How do you kind of communicate with yourself what those boundaries are for you?
Sure. And I think it's, back to the self-awareness, know what you can do, so it's obviously we all have different levels of balance. And so knowing what that balance is for you, and it may be that you can do that or that you like to do that, so I don't want to say that everybody needs to be in that, work the 8 to 5 thing. Maybe you work your best at starting off at 8 o'clock in the evening or 6 o'clock. And we were able to have that flexibility because of the pandemic. So you're able to learn that piece about yourself. And so I think knowing that this is how you work, and then being able to put that out there, that this is, from from 3 to 5, it's hard for me to actually kind of think and concentrate kind of conversation. At 5 o'clock, you're going to have the best of me. So, if we could do it then, that's when I need to do it. Or we can do it before 3, that was when I do it. So it's being able to be aware of what that looks like for you, being able to communicate that, and then also realizing that your balance is not somebody else's balance, and vice versa. So because another coworker can work 10 hours a day and still do everything else that they're doing in their everyday life, it doesn't mean that you need to do that as well. You're very different, right? We're all unique. And so knowing what your balance is, and that's how you work through that piece.
Love that. Thank you. And then our final question, last question, what advice can you give to parents who see that their child is struggling with mental health, but they don't know that there's an issue, or they don't want to necessarily talk about it?
So the child doesn't know there's an issue, or the child doesn't want to talk about there's an issue.
Exactly.
Sure. So I would say I'm always about having that, upfront conversation. I'm not necessarily that you need to have directly say that you see that that they're struggling, but maybe point out some of the things that you see that they used to do that they're not doing. I think that helps with for them to see there's a shift in their behavior, because oftentimes they're going to say, oh, well, it's okay, everything's fine. But if you say, you used to make your bed every day, but now you don't make your bed. Is there, what's going on with that? And it's something simple, but there's a shift in that behavior. So I think being able to bring that up. But I also think that it's helping them learn ways to help themselves could be so powerful and so empowering. And so maybe having a time where you sit down with them and you show them, hey, let's make a list of things that make us happy. Let's make our own little list of what we can do to help change our mood. I've been feeling kind of down because it's been hard for me with work and balance, and we're all here at home. And so I thought it'd be great if I made a list for myself of what makes me happy. And maybe you could benefit from, if you can make the same list. So, you make that list together, and then you use the list. You say, I'm going to use this list for when I'm feeling sad. I'm going to do one of these things on this list, because it's hard to think of something to do that's going to make you happy when you're sad. But if you have a list to go to, then you can go, oh, if I paint my nails, I know that changes my mood. Oh, if I take a nap, it changes my mood. If I call Jenny, that changes my mood. So put that on your list. So I think being able to give them that would help them out, and there's other things that you can help them with, but again, helping them empower them with exercise, let's helping them do maybe some deep breathing. You do deep breathing as well. There's all these on YouTube, all these yoga videos that you could do, that with your child, that helps them learn how to center themselves, so you're doing it with them. So it's not I see that you're having a problem, but let's do this together. And so you're actually empowering them and showing them different things that they could do to help them feel better, without saying, I know something's going on, let's sit down and break it down, let's figure it out. So I think having those kind of dialogues and giving them these things can kind of open the space up for them to kind of share with you, because now you're talking about something that you guys are doing together, and it's not a you have an issue, it's this is something I'm feeling. Mm-hmm. And this is what I'm going through, and they see that you're doing it, they're doing it. It kind of opens that space for that dialogue.
Yeah, no, I really love that. I mean, I think that works for anyone. I think I need to make a list for myself, like what are those things? Because you're right, when you're in that mood, when you're like down, you can't think about, you don't want to do anything, right? So if you have a list that you can pull up on your phone or pull up somewhere and be like, okay, I'm going to check one of these things off, whether it's going to get, some Italian ice, or going for a walk, or going for a run, like whatever it may be. So I think that's a great strategy for everyone, just to kind of make that list and have it ready for when you need it. So thank you so much for that. Dr. Wendy, thank you again for your time today. Some really, really great advice on how we can maintain a self-care regimen practice, but also like some tips and tricks on how we, in the midst of moments where we're feeling down, can regain that level of excitement and joy. So thank you for sharing. Before we end, I would be remiss if I did not thank Adrian Curry from the Bulls for your consistent support of Project OneTen and all the work that we are doing, and look to continue to work with you all at the Bulls to support the young men that we work with every day. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Wendy.
Thank you. This is great. I'm really glad that we could do this. And I really hope that, your continued success and be able to work with the young folks is going to be very valuable. So thank you for all that you do as well.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. And we will send out a thank you email and some really cool ways that you all can remain connected with Project OneTen as we enter into the summer. All right. Y'all have a great rest of your day.